Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Marked twice, loved once. Episode 2. Chapter 11. Nora's POV Hybrid King. I asked, stunned at the revelation. Don't tell me you didn't know, Dora asked, but I shook my head. I don't know anyone, and I'm not the social media type. I'm always buried in books in my room. Shocking. Dora said, giving me a suspicious look. Everyone knows him, and we also know that. She tried speaking, but I cut her off. I don't want to know anything about him. I just want to go home. I murmured and saw the curious gaze of Dora on me. Why were you running away? She asked. Because I feel suffocated in there. Don't worry, you can go in, and I'll get a taxi home. I lied and saw the worried look on her face. Are you sure you are okay? She asked, worried. Yes, I am. Now you have to go in while I go home. We will talk later. With those words, I placed a kiss on her cheek and made my way out of the hotel. While waiting for a taxi, I couldn't help but hear his angry voice in my head. He hates me without even getting to know me. A taxi stopped, and I hopped in. So what do we do? I asked my wolf, but didn't get a response. She was in pain and withdrew herself away from me. I sucked a deep breath and composed myself, ignoring the pain in my heart. I got out of the taxi, paid the taxi driver, and entered the house. I arrived in the living room and met Mother and Vera seated on the couch. Greetings, Mother. I greeted her and made my way to the stairs, but she called me back. Wait up, she said and made her way to me. What is it, Mother? I asked. Vera said something about you being mate with Alpha Leo. Is that correct? She asked and got a nod from me. I saw her scoff with disbelief before speaking. Well, you have to let go of him and let your sister take your place. Or else you want to be rejected publicly. She mocked, causing tears to stand in my eyes. It's obvious that he doesn't want you, but your sister. Why don't you save yourself the heartbreak and stay away from him? She muttered while I stood numb, wondering if she was actually my mother. How can a mother say this to her child? How could she not feel the pain of her own daughter? Vera will bring this family a lot of fortune if she is with Alpha Leo. That is something you can never do. She mocked while I gulped and allowed her to speak. I'd advise you not to tell this to your father because if you do, then he would report it to the Wolfly, and you know what that means. She added while I stared at her with tear-filled eyes, thinking of the possibility that she wasn't my mother, but I knew she was. There was so much evidence about it. I believe you understand what I'm saying to you. She asked while I shook my head and sucked a deep breath. I won't, Mother. I announced, I won't give up my mate to Vera. I declared firmly. You won't give up? Vera scoffed, and who is asking you to give up? She asked, how can you give up something you never had? She mocked, causing me to gulp in pain. It's not your place to give Nora. It was never yours, she said while I gulped and turned my attention to Mother. Are you really my mother? You don't have to pretend anymore, I said and heard Mom scoff. If I weren't your mother, I would have told you a long time ago. I would have had the pleasure of telling you, but unfortunately, I'm your mother, and Vera is your twin, she responded. Unfortunately? I asked, heartbroken by her words. She just told you the truth, Vera responded, causing me to return my attention to her. I was surprised at her attitude toward me. We were twins and supposed to feel each other's pain, but with Vera, it was different. She hated me and would do anything to see me in pain. We were twins, but she acts like we were competitors, aiming to show the world who's the better twin. She competes with me in everything. Whatever I have, she would want to have it, even though she doesn't need it or have any meaning to her. One day, just one day, you two will regret everything you've done to me. I declared those words as a promise and stormed up the stairs. I got to my room, shut the door, and sat on my bed. My heart throbbed with pain, and tears filled my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I was tired of crying. With a deep breath, I walked to my closet, scanned through my closet, and took out black jeans and a navy blue blouse. "You are still going?" Lolita asked, surprised that I was still considering going to the mansion. "Yes, I'm going, and he will have no choice but to let me work," I responded and placed the clothes on the couch. I undressed, took my bath, and changed into my nightwear. Tired and heartbroken, I lay on the bed and forced myself into a deep sleep, ignoring all the pain in my heart. The sound of my alarm woke me up. Lazily, I tossed on the bed and slowly opened my eyes. I moved my gaze to the bedside clock and realized it was 6 a.m. With a groan, I left the bed and strolled over to my window, opened it, and inhaled deeply the fresh air coming from the early morning breeze. I was tensed and at the same time, scared of seeing him again. "Then you can stay back." My wolf spoke, scared of getting rejected. I sighed and shook my head. "We can't keep avoiding him, Lolita. We have to face our problems." With those words, I left the window, took off my nightwear, and strolled into the bathroom. I bathed and returned to my room with a towel wrapped around my chest. I walked to my mirror and stood before it, glancing at myself. As I stood before the mirror, fresh out of the shower, I couldn't help but take a moment to examine myself. The towel around my chest felt snug, but I tried to ignore the discomfort as I focused on what I saw in front of me. I'm definitely plus size. There's no denying that. My curves are more prominent than I'd like them to be, but in my eyes, they still make me beautiful. I ran my hands down my sides, feeling the softness of my skin and the subtle roundness of my stomach. My fingers linger on the stretch marks that snake across my hips, reminding me of my body size. But instead of feeling ashamed, I choose to accept them as a part of who I am. My black hair falls in soft waves around my face, brushing against my shoulders. I can't help but play with a few strands, letting them slip through my fingers as I examine my face. My sea blue eyes seemed to sparkle in the bright light of the room, and I couldn't resist giving myself a slight wink. I have a cute nose and full lips, and my cheeks are round, giving me a youthful appearance. But as I scrutinize myself further, I can't help but wonder why men always seem to overlook me when it comes to dating. I know I'm not everyone's type, but I feel like my size is the only reason I'm not given a chance. But even in that moment of self-doubt, I find the strength to brush it off. I am beautiful, regardless of what anyone else tells me. And if someone can't see past what I look like on the outside, then they're not worth my time anyway. "We will be late," Lolita announced, taking me out of my thoughts. With a heavy sigh, I left the mirror, dried my hair with the hair dryer, and packed it in a bun. I went for my clothes on the couch and put them on. I sprayed some spray and put on my boots, glanced at myself in the mirror before picking up my bag and phone. I got downstairs and met everyone already seated at the dining table having breakfast. "Good morning, everyone." I greeted and placed a kiss on Dad's cheek. I didn't do the same with Mom because she had asked me to stop giving her kisses. "Aren't you joining us for breakfast?" Dad asked. "I'm sorry, but I'm late." "See you later." I said and made my way to leave, but Vera's words stopped me. Be ready to welcome me in the mansion. She spoke with a victorious grin, which I ignored and walked away. I left the house, took a cab, and arrived in front of the mansion. As I exited the cab, my heart pounded heavily in my chest while I had double thoughts about going in. Go in, Lolita encouraged. Heeding her words, I walked to the gate and rang the bell. Within a few seconds, the gate opened before me. You can do this, Nora. I encouraged myself and walked through the gate. Good morning. I greeted the security I met on my way to the main building, but none responded. Follow me, one of the men said and led me into the sitting room. Have a seat. He gestured, and I did as told. With panic, I squeezed my fingers, wondering how he would react if he gets to see me. You are here, Madame Emma said, announcing her presence to me. Greetings. I greeted as I stood to my feet. Have your seat. The Alpha will be with you shortly. She announced, causing my breath to seize in my chest. Alpha Leo's POV. I will be there in by tomorrow. Keep the documents waiting. Before I could complete my words, my wolf, Ethan, growled in my head. Mate is here, he announced, changing my mood instantly. What is she doing here? I asked, irritated and angry, but Ethan didn't respond. With an angry groan, I ended the call and walked out of my room. I took the stairs, and the alluring scents of honey mixed with nutmeg hit my nose, forcing an angry groan out of my lips. I was almost at the end of the stairs when I saw her in the sitting room with Emma. As if she knew I had arrived, I noticed she moved her gaze to the stairs and held my gaze. Her eyes, filled with fear. What is she doing here? I threw that question at Emma and got a quick response. She is the new library keeper. I was about to inform you of her presence. No. I objected firmly. She will not work here, I declared while holding her gaze. Her eyes look confused, and a hint of pain can be seen in them. Is something wrong? Emma asked, but I groaned and held her gaze. I couldn't tell anyone that she was my mate. It was embarrassing for me. Follow me. I directed the words to her and turned to leave. I took the stairs while I heard her footsteps behind me, but she kept her distance. Obviously, she was scared of me, which is a good thing. We got to my reading room, and I opened the door and went in, while she followed behind and shut the door. I strolled to my desk and sat behind it, while she stood by the door, gulping nervously. I ran a quick gaze at her and shook my head at the disastrous decision of the moon goddess. It still baffles me why she would choose her for me when better-looking ladies are out there. Ladies like her twin sister. I believe you know what's happening, and I don't need to explain it to you. I spoke in a cold, emotionless tone and didn't get a response from her. I don't want you as a mate, and you are not to tell anyone, I demanded, and saw a hint of pain in her eyes, but she glanced away. I don't want you working here, so I'll give you some money to help yourself in life. Do whatever you want to do, but stay away from my life, I demanded, and went for a pen. There will be no need for that. Her words stopped me. I watched her move away from the door and walk up to me. She stopped before me and held my gaze with a blank look. Mine, Ethan growled possessively. You are rejecting me even without knowing me. She asked and got a scoff from me. You are not my ideal type of mate, so I see no need to get to know you. I spoke coldly and saw her blink her eyelashes in pain. Let's get over this. Tell me how much you want, and I'll give it to you, I said, speaking coldly and picking up my pen. I don't need your money, Alpha Leo. She whispered, almost to herself. I can't accept you as my mate if that is what you want, I warned, and saw her inhale deeply before moving closer to the desk and placing her 2 hands on it. She leaned closer to me, and her alluring scent hit my nose. If you don't want to accept me as your mate, then it's fine, she paused and took a deep breath, but you won't stop me from working here. She added, causing an angry groan to leave my lips. If you don't allow me work here, then I'll tell the world I'm your mate, and you know what that means. She paused and stared at me with a stern look. The entire world will get to know that Alpha Leo's mate is a plus-size, unattractive girl. She took her hands off the desk and folded it, awaiting my response. Are you threatening me? I asked through gritted teeth. I'm not threatening you, Alpha Leo. I'm just giving you a choice to make. You don't want me as a mate, that's fine, but you won't destroy my chance of getting an excellent review on my resume. She spoke firmly while I groaned and stood to my feet. Enough! I yelled, hitting the desk with both hands. I was furious and irritated by her guts. She knew I was ashamed of letting the world know she was my mate, and she was using it against me. Only if she knew the music she was about to dance to. You want to work here? Fine. I spoke and walked over to the other side of the desk where she stood. I stopped a few steps away and noticed I scared her, but she did her best to stand firm before me. You are scaring her, Ethan growled in my head, which I ignored. I lowered my height over her and saw her gulp and take a step backward. You will work here, but I give you 1 week, just 1 week, and you will run out of this place on your heels. I threatened while holding her gaze, which was filled with fear. I will make this place uncomfortable for you in a way that you would wish you never challenged me. Now get out, I yelled and saw her jerk in fear at the sound of my voice. Leave! I yelled, and she quickly turned and ran out of the room. Damn it! I groaned and clenched my both fists. Not only was she troublesome, but she was also a pain. What you did was disgraceful, Ethan growled and shut himself away from me. With a groan, I returned to my seat and slumped on it. I massaged my forehead as her words buzzed in my head. She threatened to announce it to everyone, and I didn't want to experience such humiliation. I knew if she spilled it out to everyone, I was entitled to reject her, but that would say a lot about me to my people. They will see me as an alpha who is only concerned about physical appearance, and I will lose their respect. With a frustrated sigh, I picked up a book to read, but my mother's voice through a mind link stopped me. I'm coming back tomorrow, she announced. Okay, I will be expecting you, I responded casually. Hope I will get to meet your mate? She asked, causing a big frown to appear on my face. Yes, she is from this pack, I responded. That's great news, Mom said excitedly, eagerly to meet her. So, tell me, has Madison accepted your invitation? Mother asked curiously. No, Mother, he has said nothing yet. I said with a heavy sigh. He is going through a lot and needs to be with us, his only family. I'll talk to him and see if he will listen, she murmured while I remained silent, thinking of a plan to hatch before she comes. All right, I'll see you tomorrow. Take care of yourself. You too, Mother. I ended the mind link and made a mind link to Jason. At what time will my guest be here? I asked. By noon. He responded, and I closed the mind link. A knock came on the door, and I gestured for the person to come in. The door opened, and Lady Emma walked in, respectfully lowering her head. Is there something I can help you with? I asked with raised eyebrows. Not really, Alpha. I just wanted to confirm if you are comfortable with her working here. She asked while I remained silent for a moment before nodding. Yes, she can work here. I gestured for her to leave. As she left, I couldn't help but ponder on what to do with her. I knew whatever I needed to do, I needed to do it really quickly. To escape my worries, I picked up a book on my desk and began reading through it. Books were my favorite thing in the world. I could stay all day reading books, and if I weren't an alpha, perhaps I would have been an author, staying all day in my room and writing amazing books. I was so consumed by the book's interesting plot that I lost count of time. A knock on the door took my attention away from the book. With a groan, I closed the book when I saw Jason walking in. "Your guest is here," he announced. "I will be with her shortly." I paused and thought of a plan. "Tell the library keeper to offer our guest a drink," I said, and noticed Jason was silent for a moment, contemplating on why I should send the library keeper instead of the servants, but he nods his head and left. Having second thoughts about what I was about to do, I got to my feet and walked around the room. Although I was about to make a drastic choice, I knew it was the only option I had given the circumstances. Alpha Leo's POV arrived at my waiting room and met her seated on the couch, waiting for me. The moment I stepped in, she stood on her feet and respectfully lowered her head. "Have a seat." I gestured and took the seat before her. While seated before her, I cast a quick glance at her and was satisfied with what I saw. She has long black hair that falls just above her hips. Her beauty could not be denied. Her skin is rich and fair-colored, and her eyes are bright and almond-shaped. Her figure is slim and graceful. I could see the gentle curve of her lips as she smiled at me. She was effortlessly beautiful, making me curse the moon goddess for not giving her to me instead. "What is your name?" I asked, unbuttoning 2 buttons from my jacket. "I'm Veronica, but you can call me Vera," she responded in the most delicate voice I've heard in a lady. "Vera." I called it out like I was spelling it. She smiled widely, revealing her set of beautifully arranged teeth. "I believe you know why you are here." I spoke, going straight to the point. "I have no idea, Alpha." She spoke respectfully and politely. With a deep sigh, I stood to my feet and walked around the room for a moment, contemplating whether I should go with the plan, but after much thinking, I decided to go with it. I returned to my seat, looked her straight in the eyes, and said, "I believe you know I am mate with your sister." She didn't look surprised by my words, which was a good thing because it would make things easier for me. "But I don't want her," I added, and saw a half smile appear on her face. "Don't do it, you will regret it," Ethan warned, but I ignored him. "I want you to act as my mate for a year, and I will pay you handsomely," I said, and saw her smile, which was a good start. "All you have to do is pretend to be my mate before everyone, especially my mother, but we won't get married. Don't worry, I will have an excuse to give." I explained and waited for her to speak. "Why pick me and not somebody else?" she asked, curious. "Because you are the perfect person for this job, but if you are uncomfortable with it because she is your twin sister, then I will do it." She cut in quickly, afraid that I might have a change of heart. "Very good," I said, and stood at my feet. "There is something else that needs to be done," I said and stood behind her. Slowly, I lowered my head and whispered into her ear. "You have to bear a mark on your neck, but since I can't do that, then we will look for other means to give you a mark. So, the question is, are you willing to have a mark on your neck?" I asked in a whisper and moved away from her. I returned to my seat, sat down, and held her gaze. I was expecting her to have a confused expression on her face, but she didn't. Instead, She had an excited look on her face. "Whose mark would I bear since it is not yours?" she asked. "You can mark yourself with an object I'll give you. It has the shape of human teeth," I explained, and saw her go into deep thought. "End this madness," Ethan growled in disapproval, but I ignored him. "It's better I do this than get married to Annabelle or mate with my actual mate. I can't see myself living the rest of my life with Annabelle. Not only was she troublesome, but she was a pain." "I will do it," Vera said, getting me out of my thoughts. "How much will I be paid for it?" she asked. "You will be paid $5,000 monthly, excluding other benefits you will get as my mate," I responded, and saw the excited look on her face. "Do you agree?" I asked, despite knowing the answer. "Yes, I will." She spoke excitedly. My wolf cursed. "Just keep quiet," I yelled at him and focused on Vera. "I don't guarantee there will be any romantic relationship between us," I said to clarify some misunderstandings because she was obviously building it in her head. "You can do whatever you want to do, but make sure you don't get caught. I don't want to deprive you of having, so you can have with whomever you want to, but don't tell anyone about our plan," I warned, and she nodded her head in response. "Do you have questions?" I asked and saw her go into deep thought for a moment and shake her head. "Very well then," I said and stood on my feet. "I'll communicate with you if anything comes up." She stood at her feet and respectfully lowered her head. "Come with me," I said, and led the way out of my waiting room. Vera and I left my waiting room and both made our way to the staircase that led to the hallway. The walls were lined with paintings, and the floors were made of polished marble, creating a sense of grandeur as we walked through the space. After a short walk, Vera and I arrived at a wooden door at the end of the hallway. As I pushed it open, I was greeted by the sight of Nora seated on a comfortable chair next to a large oak table in the library room. As she saw Vera and I enter the room, her expression changed slightly, and I could sense a hint of pain in her eyes. But she quickly regained her composure and stood to her feet. Nora's POV. I watched them walk into the room while I held a gaze with Vera. "What are you doing here?" I asked through telepathy, but she scoffed out loud, and wrapped her hands around Alpha Leo's waist, and rested her head on his chest. "Mine." Lolita howled jealously in my head, sending discomfort through my entire body, but I composed myself and said, "Can I get you something?" I asked, hiding the pain in my voice. "Not really. My mate just wanted to have a look at the famous Luciano library," he said, making my breath hitch in my chest. I stammered, "Yes, his mate. Do you have anything to say?" Vera asked with folded arms. I didn't give a reply to her, but I held the gaze of Alpha Leo, who had no expression on his face. "Why?" I asked, trying not to break down. "You know the reason, my dear sister," Vera responded, making her way over to me. "Firstly, you are not what he wants as a mate, and secondly, I always have what is yours," she whispered, loud enough only for me to hear. I gulped at her words, ignoring the advice of my wolf to attack her, because the last time I did, I almost killed her, and Mom called me a witch. "You should speak to me with respect." She spoke out loud and went back to where Alpha Leo stood. "This is a nice view. I hope I can spend some time here with you someday." She spoke in her usual charming voice that no man would say no to. "Of course, and very soon," he responded while holding my gaze. "I told you, you would regret working here, and this is just the beginning." He spoke through telepathy and led Vera out of the room. My heart clenched in my chest as I watched them leave. Slowly, I fell to the ground and sobbed loudly while my body shook with pain. Not only was I in pain, but my wolf was, too. She kept howling in pain, causing my head to ache severely. I cried for goddess knows when until I was exhausted and decided to take hold of myself. I stood to my feet, returned to the seat, and sat on it. With shaking hands, I tried to create a new chart for the books in the library, but my mind was blank, and I couldn't concentrate. With a heavy sigh, I strolled to a library shelf where romance novels are kept and picked the one my fingers touched. I read the book's title, which says, The Alpha Behind the Mask. Sighing heavily, I returned to the desk, opened the book, and read through it. While reading, my thoughts kept drifting, but the exciting plot of the book kept me going. I read and lost count of time until the door opened and Lady Emma entered. The hills beneath her shoes were the only sounds heard in the quiet room. It's past 7 p.m. It seems you are indulging in that book, she said, looking at the book in my hand. I closed the book, checked the time on my phone, and realized she was indeed correct. It was 20 minutes past 7 p.m. I'm so sorry, I apologized, while getting on my feet. I walked to the shelf and dropped the book in its exact position, although I wished I could take it home. With a deep breath, I walked back to Lady Emma and handed the keys over to her. Not reading the book anymore, I came back to reality and faced my troubles and pain. I picked up my bag and phone and stood before Lady Emma, who had an expressionless look on her face. Do you know Alpha Leo? She asked with a questioning look. Tell her, Lolita urged, but I kicked against it. Yes, he is the alpha of the pack, I responded firmly and saw her gaze at me quizzically before leading the way out of the library. We exited the library, walked down the stairs, and arrived in the sitting room. I'll see you tomorrow morning, she said, while I nodded and left. I walked out of the mansion building, through the gate, and left the mansion. A sigh of relief escaped my lips as I began to walk, searching for a taxi. After a few minutes' walk, I boarded a taxi and got home. I entered the sitting room and met my family at the dining table, having dinner more like a fest. Different dishes and delicacies were displayed on the table, and before I could ask what was going on, Mom said, "You are here. Come and join us and celebrate with your sister," Mom said with a big smile, getting me confused. What celebration? I directed my question to my father. Your sister claims she is Alpha Leo's mate. He spoke in a whisper. Why do you sound like you are unhappy about it? Mom questioned Dad with a frown, but he did not respond to her. Come and celebrate with me, sister, you are my twin after all, and my joy is your joy and my pain your pain, Vera spoke sarcastically. I stood numb and stared at each member of my family before staring at the food on the table. Are you okay, my dear? Dad asked with concern, but I didn't give a response. Instead, I took the stairs to my room. She is just jealous. I heard my mother's voice as I climbed the stairs. With a heavy heart, I climbed the stairs and got to my room. I entered and closed the door while tears piled up in my eyes, blurring my sight. With weak feet, I strolled to the mirror in my room, stood before it, and stared at myself, reflecting in the mirror. I'm tired, I whispered, and allowed the tears to fall. Why? Why do you always let her have what is mine? I yelled at the mirror, more like I was speaking to the moon goddess. What did I do to deserve this kind of hate? I yelled in tears, why do you hate me this much? I questioned the moon goddess, but, as usual, I got no answer. With a sniff, I wiped off the tears that fell on my cheeks, picked up my bag, and dashed out of my room. I arrived in the sitting room, and before Dad could ask where I was going, I had already left the house. I boarded a taxi, got in, and relaxed my face on the taxi window. "Where are you headed?" the driver asked. "Any club nearby," I responded, and got a nod from him. My heart was in pain, and so was my wolf. She was so silent and withdrew herself from me. After a few minutes' drive, the taxi stopped in front of a clubhouse. "Thank you." I paid the taxi driver and got out of the car. Standing before the club, I sucked in a deep breath and made my way to the entrance door. Dora had always told me that in order to get away from my pains, I should sometimes get myself drunk, and today I was going to try it. I got to the door, and security ran a quick check on me before letting me in. I pushed through the crowd, the music space pounding through my chest. As I entered the club, I could feel the eyes of a few people lingering on me, but I ignored them and made my way to the bar. As I took a seat, the bartender looked up at me. "A bottle of whiskey and a glass," I requested, pulling out my wallet from my bag. The bartender nods and turns to take my order. Sighing, I took a deep breath and looked around the room, surveying the crowd. Some people were dancing, and some were talking, but all of them seemed to be caught up in the energy of the club. The bartender returned with my bottle of whiskey. I thanked him, paid for it, and filled up a glass. The burn of the liquor was a welcome distraction from the noise of the club and the attention of the other people. I took another long sip and leaned back in my seat, feeling a sense of calm settle over me. Maybe Dora was right, I whispered to my wolf, and filled another cup. I continued filling up my cup until the bottle became empty. With a frustrated groan, I called the bartender's attention and requested another bottle, which he gave me. I opened it, filled up my glass, and gulped it all down my throat, ignoring the loud buzz in my head. Again, I filled another glass and swallowed it all, drinking half of the second bottle. My sight became blurry, and my feet became weak, but I ignored those signs and continued drinking. After finishing the second bottle, I curiously looked around, only to notice a familiar figure seated on the other side of the bar. Lord Madison! I giggled drunkenly and got up on my feet. Special POV Lord Madison's POV. I sat at the bar, gulping my drink and lost in thought, when suddenly, a woman stumbled up to me, swaying on unsteady feet. She was clearly drunk, her words slurred as she spoke. "Hey, I know you," she said, pointing a finger at me. "You're the hybrid king." I looked up at her, my irritation growing as I recognized her. It was the girl I had met at the party who had fallen by my side just to gain my interest. "Yeah, I remember you," I said flatly, hoping she would take the hint and leave me alone. But she didn't seem to pick up on my tone. Instead, she plopped down on the bar stool and looked up at me. "I believe you misunderstood me that night," she giggled. "You think I'm one of those girls who would do anything to get your attention, hey?" She spoke while I could perceive the smell of too much intake of whiskey from her mouth. I groaned, feeling my frustration mount. I didn't want to draw attention to us, but I also didn't want her by my side. With a frustrated sigh, I took a sip of my drink and tried to ignore her, but she just kept on talking. "The thing is that I missed my steps and nothing else. And besides, why would I want to get your attention when I know you'll definitely not look my way, and I'm not your type?" She scoffed, took my glass of drink, and gulped it all down her throat. Because of her behavior, I found myself growing more and more irritated. I just wanted to be left alone, but this drunk woman seemed determined to keep me company, and annoyed me. With an angry groan, I stood up abruptly and threw some money down on the bar. "You should go home. You are drunk." And with that, I turned and walked away. I walked out of the club and located where my car was, only to hear loud yells behind me. With an irritated groan, I turned and saw the same drunk woman approaching me while tripping. I opened my car door, but she got to me before I could go in. "Hybrid King, I have to report an injustice to you." She spoke drunkenly while placing her two hands above her hips. "Move away, young woman, or you won't like what I will do to you." I threatened and tried to enter my car, but felt her hand grab my arm, and out of impulse, I shoved her away and saw her hit her head on a car and fall flat to the ground. With a groan, I stood and watched, waiting for her to get up, but she didn't. Neither did she move nor make a sound. "Damn it!" I groaned and walked over to where she lay. I squatted over her, checked her pulse, and realized she was alive but had just fainted. With a heavy sigh, I returned to my car, took out a bottle of water, and returned to where she lay. I opened the water and poured it on her, but she didn't move an inch. "Wake up!" I groaned, and just then, I noticed people were coming out of the club, and I didn't want them to see me with her. So many things were happening in my life, and I didn't want to give people another headline. Left with no other options, I took her into my arms and returned to my car. I opened the door with one hand and made her sit on the back seat. Sighing, I closed the door and entered the driver's seat. I turned on the car and drove out of the club. As I drove, my blood boiled with anger and irritation. I went out tonight to clear my head and run away from the pain in my heart, but I didn't know it would end up this way. After driving for almost 20 minutes, I drove into my hotel and parked in my parking space. I got out of the car, opened the back seat door, and shook her viciously, but I didn't get a response from her. I hit the car with my left fist. My blood boiled with rage and anger. I didn't want this. I didn't leave my country and my home just to end up in such a mess. What do I do? I asked my wolf, but as usual, he was silent. He has been quiet for the past 3 months. Great, ignore me, I grumbled, and picked her up from the car. In order to avoid being seen by people and creating another headline news for them, I followed the back door and took the stairs. With her in my arms, I climbed the stairs until we got to the 4th floor, where my private suite was located. I carried her through the hallway and made her rest on the wall while I opened the door. I entered the room, locked the door with the key, and made her lie on the long couch. With a sigh, I stretched my arms. She indeed has a large amount of weight. As she lay numb on the couch, I stood and stared at her, taking a good glimpse of her. As I stood there, watching the sleeping lady on my couch, I took in the peaceful sight before me. Her chest rises and falls rhythmically as she hangs into slumber, her breaths coming out in soft, calming whispers. Her body is relaxed, and there is no tension in her expression or posture. I can see her face clearly and notice how her black hair cascades down her shoulders, framing her face perfectly. She has a round face that looks soft and puffy, giving me the urge to touch it, but I sighed and took a step backward. Grumbling within myself, I went to my drawer, took out a first aid kit, and returned to her. She was bleeding in her left arm, probably from the hit. As I knelt beside her, a frustrated sigh left my lips. Never in my wildest dreams would I imagine my night would end up this way. I cleaned her wounded arm, wrapped it in a bandage, and returned the first aid box. With curiosity, I stood and watched her while I contemplated on what to do with her. It was almost midnight, and she hadn't woken up. I wanted to check her bag and maybe go through her things, but I stopped myself and sat on the bed with my gaze fixed on her. I could see the rise and fall of her chest and hear the inaudible whisper coming from her lips. After the incident at Leo's party, I had forgotten about her and what she did because I got numerous reactions from ladies. With what has happened to me a few months ago, many ladies have looked for means and ways to get my attention, but none has been able to, and none will. While my gaze was still fixed on her, I noticed she was crying silently in her sleep, forcing me to get up on my feet. I walked to her, squatted beside her, and watched her sob silently with her eyes closed. With furrowed eyebrows, I watched tears fall freely from her eyes and began hearing mumbling from her lips. I paid attention to her words but couldn't pick any meaningful ones from them. Tears continued to fall from the corners of her eyes until she mumbled a word I could pick. "Why do you always take what is mine?" She mumbled with so much pain in her voice. Nora's POV: a jackhammer. There had to be a jackhammer pounding in my head this very second. That could be the only explanation for this horrendous aching in my head. When I opened my eyes, I had that 3 to 4 second grace period before I remembered who I was and my name. Then my body announced its condition. I was having a blinding, pounding headache, followed by a wave of nausea and agonizing cold sweats. I groaned as I sat up. Just how much wine had I had to drink last night? I tried to sit up, but my arm hurt like tiny pins were pricked into it. As I sat up, a pit grew in my stomach as realization washed over me. I was not in my room. This room was so big and luxurious to be my room. I had no idea who it belonged to. Who did I follow home last night? I glanced around the room, but nothing in the room was volunteering any clues. Is this a hotel? Did I have a one-night stand? I looked down at myself. My clothes were still intact. Check. There were no pictures on the walls or personal belongings to give off the kind of person I was expecting. The room was pristine. If someone actually lives here, that person must be the cleanest person on earth. I was grateful for the dark floor-to-ceiling curtains, which were still drawn, giving the room a cozy feel. I looked at my pinching arm and saw it was bandaged. Oh, my God, what on earth have I done? I said to myself and climbed out off the couch. Nora, think. Where am I, and where is my phone? I asked no one in particular. Do you have the habit of always talking to yourself? A deep voice asked behind me, startling me. I spun to see no other person than the hybrid king. My jaw dropped, and my eyes widened. You. Slowly, the events of the previous night came back to me in a flash. I remember chasing after him, and my cheeks flushed with embarrassment from that memory. He wore a devilish smirk, enjoying my discomfort. Is that the best way to thank someone that saved your drunken twice? He asked. I mean, considering the fact that you are all over me, seeking my notice. I scoffed. What? All right, listen here, hybrid king. I have already told you that that wasn't the case. I should be worried about what I am doing in your house. Did you kidnap me or something? I won't waste my time kidnapping you. You are not my type. There it goes again. I am nobody's type, but with how sore I am feeling, I wish to reply to him. Aren't men like you supposed to have manners? I asked. Men like me? He inquired, moving his brows, expecting me to explain further. Men with power and influence. Were you all taught to say the first thing that barged into your heads? I will let go scot-free today. But you must not speak to me in such a manner again. His voice became stern and his expression serious. Get whatever belongs to you and leave immediately, and I do not want to see you again, purposely or by mistake. With that, he left me alone in the room again. I sighed and sank onto the couch. Tears stung my eyes as memories of last night flashed in my eyes again. Vera and Alpha Leo. Nora's POV. As I walked into the house, I could feel my legs were shaking and I couldn't tell it was because of the excess alcohol I had consumed or because of the fact that I was afraid Dad would scold me for not coming back home. Either ways, I felt weak in the knees. "Where are you coming from, young lady?" Dad's voice brought my movement to a stop. I swallowed as I turned to see him folding his hands against his chest, staring at me like some journalist who awaited answers. I gulped as I turned to face him completely. I had been on my tippy toes because I didn't want to call attention, but then sadly, all that didn't help. "I'm sorry, Dad," I told him. My head was still aching and I didn't think I could start to explain myself. "You're sorry?" He scoffed as he walked towards me before placing his hands on my shoulder, and even though I knew he was angry, I could still see how caring he was towards me. "Nora, being sorry isn't enough. Do you know how worried I was about you? You had me extremely scared, especially when you weren't taking your calls and sometime later, your phone was switched off. How do you think that made me feel?" He asked me and tears slowly started to stream down my cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I swear it will never happen again," I told him. Dad cared about me so much, he was so worried about me, and yet, I still let people who weren't supposed to matter get to me. He sighed as he turned away from me. "Where were you?" he asked me. I bowed my head. What was I supposed to say? That I had deliberately gone to a bar because my mate didn't want me but my sister? Even in my head, it sounded so stupid of me, and before I could even bring myself to speak, he asked again. "I'm speaking to you, young lady," he said, and I shivered. I opened my mouth, about to speak when Mum walked in. "Dad, What else does she have to say?" "Trust me, if you want to know anything about Nora, you shouldn't ask her, not at all. You know who you should ask," she asked as she passed me a look filled with disgust. It honestly broke my heart to see my own mother do this, but what choice did I have? It was my fate after all. "I'm sure, she must have been at a strippers club," she said, and I shut my eyes. How could she even say this? She chuckled before continuing, "Oh wait, how could I forget? She can't get into a stripper club, she's overweight and probably wouldn't even fit through the door," she said, and with that, she burst into laughter. I couldn't take it. The fact I couldn't do anything didn't mean I could stand there and listen to these awful things being said to me. I made to walk out on her when she made this weird sound she always did with her mouth. Holding on to my hand, she spoke. "Let me guess, when you weren't allowed into the stripper club, you decided to go someplace where men who would touch anything would be," she said, and I took my hands out of hers. "I didn't do any such thing," I told her as the tears I had been trying so hard to hold on finally found their way down my cheeks. She chuckled, maniacally, "There's no need to cry. Unless I'm actually right and all the men you met eventually dumped you when they found out they couldn't manage you," she said, and scoffed. In that time, Dad had tried to shut her up, but then as usual, no one could. I stared at her. She never cared about me, and sometimes, if not at all times, I wondered if she actually birthed me. I sniffled, wiping my tears off my cheek slowly. "I did no such thing, so your words wouldn't get to me," I told her, and made to leave when her last word hit me hard. "So they didn't dump you in the middle of the night? That's a relief, but then sadly, you won't be called back," she said. This time, I didn't even bother turning as I walked into my room, not sure if I was to feel angered or cry. After sitting in my bed for some time, my hands acting as support to my head, I managed to get off the bed. This wasn't new and I didn't know why it still got to me. I took a deep inhale. I had work and I needed to be there, immediately. I shouldn't have let Mum's words get to me. I really let myself down and I knew I had to be displeased at myself. I walked into the bathroom, taking a quick shower as I got ready to leave for work. I could hear creaks from within the library and I furrowed my eyebrows. Who could it be? The library was a private area and not everyone was allowed in, and as far as I knew, the Alpha would definitely not be here, not at this time at least. I walked in to see a woman, middle-aged, seated, reading a book. I took a deep inhale as I walked to her. "Excuse me, how are you doing?" I asked and she turned to me and she looked very cool. "I'm doing great, thanks." "Who are you?" she asked me and I smiled. "Actually, I'm the library keeper. This is a private area, please." "I'm afraid you'd have to leave, only the royal family are allowed in here." I told her calmly and she smiled as she got up. She took out her right hand and I stared at the ring on it. "I'm Lady Christabel, the Alpha's mother," she told me and I gasped as I immediately bowed my head. "Forgive me, my lady. I swear I didn't know. Please have mercy on me," I told her as I swallowed and she chuckled. "You're very nice, I could have sworn anyone else would kick me out." "Tell me, what's your name?" she asked me and I smiled slightly. "Nora. I'm the library keeper," I told her with a smile on my face. She nodded slightly. "Nora, nice name," she told me and I bowed again. "Not only do you have a nice name, you have a nice attitude. Come, I'd like to know more about you," she told me and this felt like the best day of my life. She didn't consider the fact that I was overweight, she talked to me like a mother did her daughter and this felt so soothing, it was the most soothing I'd felt my whole and I smiled all through. We were still conversing when the door creaked open. "Mother, you're here." These were the first words I heard and I closed my eyes. Why'd he have to be here? Alpha Leo's POV as I made my way to them, I held her gaze and saw her roll her eyes and look away. She looked different and lively today, and it's all thanks to my mother's hospitality. "You are here?" I asked Mother and saw her nod. "Why didn't you ask me to bring you?" "I was expecting you tomorrow," I spoke in a calm tone so that she wouldn't notice the uneasiness in my voice. She was supposed to arrive tomorrow and meet Vera at the mansion, but her surprise arrival made me uncomfortable. "Yes, I decided to surprise you," she said while getting on her feet. "I didn't know we've gotten a new library keeper," she spoke while flashing a big smile at Nora, which turned my stomach. This was Mother, always open to making new friends. "I believe you've already met her," I spoke with a frown while eyeing Nora, who didn't look my way. I could tell she was uncomfortable with my presence. "Where is your mate? I thought she would be living here already." Mother asked. "She wanted us to get married before moving here," I responded quickly, so she wouldn't get suspicious. "Oh, I think I like her already. She has principles," Mom praised while I held the gaze of Nora and saw the hurt in her eyes. I knew she wished she could tell everyone that we were mates, but she was also scared of rejection. She knew if she did that, then I'll definitely reject her and such pain would destroy her wolf. "Let's talk better in my room, Mom," I said and got a nod from Mother. Without looking her way, I made my way out of the room while I heard Mom behind me, telling her she would be back. "What you are doing, I'm totally against it," my wolf warned, but I totally ignored and made a mind link. "Vera." I called through mind link and quickly got a response. "Yes, Alpha, you have to be in the mansion, be sure you've marked yourself before coming. Your mother is here," she spoke excitedly, not even a hint of nervousness could be heard in her voice. It seems you are not nervous, I asked and got a soft scoff from her. Not at all, Alpha, I'm a born actress. Watch me go into play, she responded while I shook my head even though she couldn't see me. I'll see you in 2 hours. And dress properly. With those words, I ended the mind link and sat on the couch opposite Mom. I believe you are happy that you will no longer marry Lady Annabelle, Mom spoke while I scoffed before responding. I will never marry her, and I pity the man who would end up as her partner, I said and saw Mom roll her eyes. She is not that bad, Mom tried defending her, but I knew she knew what I meant. So when am I meeting your mate? Mother asked. In the next 2 hours, I responded. Then we have to get ready, Mom said, getting me confused. Don't tell me you've forgotten that every soon-to-be Luna is to be welcomed into the mansion traditionally? She asked while I nodded and went into deep thought. I had totally forgotten. Nora's POV. I was still drafting a chart board that I would use to document the books in the library when the door opened, and Lady Emma walked in and closed the door behind her. The mansion workers are to be assembled downstairs, she announced while making her way to me. Is there a problem? I asked while getting up on my feet. No, my dear, actually, the Alpha's maid is officially stepping her feet into the mansion, she said while my heart pierced my chest. Join us downstairs. She will soon be here. With those words, she walked out of the room, while I slumped in my seat. It's happening, and I can't do anything about it. Why don't you just spill it out? My wolf, Lolita, suggested, but I did not heed it. She won't be able to endure the pain of openly being rejected, and I can't go through such shame. I drew back the tears that threatened to fall on my cheek, stood to my feet, and sucked deeply before making my way to the door. I locked the library and took the stairs to the sitting room, where I met not less than 30 workers standing beside each other. Some wore uniforms, while others wore casual wear, just like me. While trying to get familiar with the scenarios, I saw Alpha Leo making his way to us, while his mother, Lady Christabel, walked beside him with a bowl of blood in her hands. When I saw the bowl in her hands, I shook my head, wishing it wasn't what I was thinking. She is almost here, Alpha Leo announced, and Lady Emma led the way, and we followed and stood at the entrance door. As the other mansion servants and I stood at the entrance door, the anticipation for Vera's arrival grew stronger. I couldn't help but feel my heart torn into pieces as I watched the grand preparation made for her. This was mine, and she was taking it. Some servants stood on the right side of the door, wearing their finest uniforms, and others stood in the left corner, chatting softly with each other and making small talk to pass the time. I stood in the middle, feeling heartbroken and in pain. Vera was my sister, yet she caused me this much pain. As time approached, I heard the sound of a car pulling up outside. I took a deep breath and composed myself. Moments later, the doorbell rang, and the butler quickly answered it. There she was, standing in the doorway, looking stunning in a designer dress and jewelry. "Welcome, madam," the butler said, bowing respectfully. "We have been eagerly awaiting your arrival." I saw Vera flash her charming smile at him and try to step her feet into the mansion, but Lady Christabel stopped her. "Hold on, my dear. You must be welcomed properly as the soon-to-be Luna of this pack." She spoke with a big smile and made her way to the door where Vera stood. Lady Christabel kept the bowl of blood on the floor and flickered a warm smile at Vera before saying, "In this bowl contains the blood of 5 generations of the Lunas of this pack. My blood is here, and so is the blood of my mother-in-law and the one before her, and one day your blood will be spilled into the bowl." Her words made my heart shriek in my chest. This was my right, not hers. I'm the one whose blood is to be spilled into that bowl and not hers. To be officially welcomed into the family, you must step your feet in the bowl of blood and walk into the house, leaving your footprints on the floor. Lady Christabel said while I held a gaze with Alpha Leo. This is wrong, I whispered through telepathy, but he ignored me and looked away. While my heart throbbed with pain, I watched Vera place her left foot into the bowl of blood, take it out, and put it on the floor. She did the same for the right leg. Come in, my dear. Lady Christabel spoke in a welcoming tone, while Vera nodded her head and walked through our midst with a big smile on her face. Tears welled up in my eyes as I watched her leave her footprints on the floor and go to the sitting room. She sat on the couch while Alpha Leo kissed her forehead and sat beside her. Some maids should wipe off the blood on the floor, while the others should return to their duties. Lady Emma spoke, and all the servants walked away while I stood there, numb and heartbroken. Nora. Her words took me out of my thoughts. Why are you still standing here? You can return to the library. She spoke, giving me a questioning look. Yes, I whispered and walked away from the entrance door. As I made my way to the stairs, I held Vera's gaze and saw a mischievous smile on her face. That's my twin sister over there, she announced to Lady Christabel, causing her to focus on me. Nora? She asked in disbelief, having the same expression anyone would have if they got to know we were twins. Yes, come join us, sister. She spoke in a friendly tone, and I knew she was pretending. Join us. Lady Christabel urged when she noticed I wasn't attempting to walk over to them. While approaching them, I took a deep breath and held Vera's gaze. What are you up to? I questioned and heard her chuckle through the mind link. I took the single couch opposite Vera and Alpha Leo. You didn't tell me Alpha Leo's mate was your sister. She spoke while I flashed a weak smile but didn't say a word. My sister is always like that. She doesn't talk much. Vera spoke, while Lady Christabel nodded and fixed her gaze on Vera. So, what is your name, my dear? She asked, wanting to get to know Vera. My name is Veronica Edwin, I'm in my final year in college, studying journalism. She spoke politely. Nice. Lady Christabel praised, she is the best mom. Alpha Leo praised and placed a kiss on her forehead. Mine. My wolf whined in pain. And she is so beautiful. Lady Christabel praised while I stayed there and watched Alpha Leo and Lady Christabel pour praises on Vera. I held her gaze and saw the victorious smile on her face, one she always has whenever she succeeds in taking whatever was mine. She had the same smile when we were just 10. She took a pair of shoes given to me by our form mistress for taking the first position in class. She also had this same smile when we were 15 when I won a 2-day vacation to Spain. She used mother to blackmail me into giving the ticket. She also had this smile on her face when she took my boyfriend, this and so many others I couldn't remember, but it was used to me. When are you guys getting married and giving me grandchildren? Lady Christabel asked with so much expectation in her voice. Very soon. Alpha Leo responded while holding my gaze. My heart got shattered by his words, and I knew it was time to leave. I have to go back to work, I announced while standing up. May I be excused? I said and received a nod from Lady Christabel. I left the sitting room, took the stairs, opened the library door, and went inside. I leaned against the door and closed my eyes, letting the tears fall freely on my cheeks. The pain in my heart couldn't be compared to what I had felt in the past. This time, it wasn't just me, but my wolf was also in pain. Memories of what took place downstairs played in my head. Everything was supposed to be mine, but as the moon goddess would have it, she always let Vera have what was mine. A knock on the door made me leave the door. I composed myself, opened the door, and saw Lady Emma before me with an expressionless look on her face. She entered the room and closed the door before holding my gaze. I have some questions, and I believe you have the answers. Nora's POV. Have a seat, she said, gesturing for me to take my place behind the desk. I held her gaze for a moment before taking my seat. Is something wrong? I asked, curious about what she wanted to talk about. I watched her remain silent for a moment before speaking. The day Alpha Leo saw you, he acted strangely, but I didn't want to ask until I confirmed my suspicion. She said while I gulped and waited for her to finish, you are his mate, not your sister. She muttered those words, not as a question, but as a declaration. I remained silent because I didn't know what to say. I couldn't deny it, and neither could I accept it. You don't have to say anything about it. It's already clear to me, she spoke and made her way toward me. I don't know what game Alpha Leo is playing, but I'll advise you to keep your mouth shut. If he doesn't want people to know, then it should remain that way. She advised while I remained silent. There are things you don't know about Alpha Leo, and I would advise not to get him angry unless you want to disappear from this world with no trace of you. She spoke while I held her gaze, wondering if she was advising me or actually threatening me. Keep your mouth shut. This is advice. With those words, she left the room, leaving me with so many questions. She knew Alpha Leo and I were mates, but instead of advising me to speak up, she was warning me to keep quiet and allow Alpha Leo to have his way. She's a peesh, Lolita cursed while I wiped my mind of those thoughts and went back to work. I lost count of time until a knock came on the door, and before I could respond, the door opened, and Vera walked in. She smiled devilishly at me as she made her way toward me. What do you want? I asked while getting on my feet. Can't I say goodbye to you before I leave? She asked while raising her eyebrows. I scoffed and shook my head. Stop putting on a show, no one is here, it's just the two of us, I spoke while holding her gaze. Oops. Thanks for reminding me, I totally forgot. She chuckled and tried to take the couch, but I stopped her. This is a private library, and only the royal family is allowed to stay here. She laughed loudly at my words, as if I had just made a silly joke. I stood and watched her laugh her lungs out before she settled down and approached me. She got to the desk, placed her two hands on the desk, and held my gaze. If anyone shouldn't be here, then it's definitely you. You seem to forget that I'm the soon-to-be Luna of the pack and also the future mistress of the mansion. She spoke with a triumphant grin while I stared disgustedly. Very soon, you will lower your head in respect whenever you see me. She chuckled loudly and tried moving away, but I stopped her by holding her arms. Why? I asked with anger and pain. You are my sister, my own sister, why would you do this to me? I cannot do this to you, why can you do this to me? I asked in tears and saw the victorious grin on her face. She took my hand away from her arm and held my gaze with anger and hatred. You still can't remember what you did to me? She asked while I furrowed my eyebrows, confused. What are you talking about? I asked, eager to know what she was referring to because I knew I had never wronged her. So you don't remember? She asked angrily. I don't, I responded. Well, let me refresh your memory, she said while taking a deep breath. You have always been Dad's favorite. He loves you and gives you everything. That's not true, I objected. Dad loves all his children equally. Really? She scoffed, shaking her head. Then can you explain why he gave you the royal badge and not me? She asked, trying not to raise her voice. What badge? I asked, confused. Oh, please, don't act like you've forgotten, she spoke while I shook my head in total confusion. I can't remember, I said. You do. She yelled and took a deep breath, preventing herself from exploding. We were 9 years old, she announced, getting me confused. I was curious and confused, wondering what a 9-year-old me could have done to make Vera hate me until now. Dad came home that day with a royal badge. Our family was among the 5 families lucky enough to have the royal badge that year, she muttered with hatred-filled eyes. A daughter of the 5 families is granted a whole-day tour of the mansion and also has the privilege of dining with the Luna. She spoke while I remained confused. I remembered Dad bringing home a royal badge when Vera and I were still kids, but I didn't go because of Vera's mistake. If anyone should be upset, it's me, not her. He chose you and gave the badge to you without even thinking about it, she said through gritted teeth. You know he chose me because I was the eldest daughter. I tried to speak, but she cut me off. Lies. He chose you because he loves you more, she said, while I stood silent and dumbfounded by her words. I cried and told him I wanted it, but what did he do? He gave it to you, and when I snatched it and tore it by mistake, he locked me up in my room for the whole day. She spoke with gritted teeth while I remained dumbfounded. I had no idea that Vera had grown up to hate me because of something trivial. If anyone should be angry, it should be me. I had the chance to meet with the then Luna, but she tore the badge, preventing me from going. This is why you hate me? I asked. You grew up to hate me over something trivial? I asked, dumbfounded. You may see it as something silly, but it was not for me. Right from that day, I promised myself that I would take whatever was yours, I would never let you have anything, and I won't stop until I see you crawl to me, begging for forgiveness. She didn't finish her words when the door opened, and Lady Emma walked in. Lunch is ready, she told Vera, who nodded and flickered a victorious smile at me before leaving with Lady Emma. I slumped in my seat as her words buzzed in my head. It was shocking that Vera hated me for an event for which I wasn't at fault, an event that happened when we were just 9. She's a terrible person, my wolf cursed while I sighed and relaxed my head on the seat's headrest. After composing myself, I returned to work until the day was over. I got home and met Mother in the kitchen, preparing dinner. Good evening, Mom, I greeted her at the door, but she glared my way and went back to cutting the vegetables without responding to my greeting. I wanted to ignore her and go up to my room, but I had questions that were bothering me. Mother! I called as I stepped into the kitchen. I have something to ask you. Before I could complete my sentence, she cut me off. I don't have an answer to give. As you can see, I'm really busy, she responded as if she was already irritated by my presence. Why do you hate me? I asked, standing before her. I met Vera at the mansion and asked her the same question, and she was kind enough to give me a reason. A reason that's so silly and ridiculous, and I believe you'll also have a reason for hating me this way. So, tell me, Mom, why do you hate me so much? Did you almost lose your life while giving birth to me, and Vera's birth was easier? Did I insult you when I was little? Did I take something that was yours, or am I not your daughter? I asked, half in tears, waiting for an answer from her, but she didn't say a word. She ignored my presence and continued cutting the vegetables. With a deep sigh, I composed myself and left the kitchen. While I went to my room, I thought of my relationship with my mother. As long as I remember, she never let me get close to her. While she taught Vera everything she needed to know as a woman, I learned from the internet and others. She didn't let me be with her in the kitchen, and she didn't teach me how to make meals, but I was clever enough to enroll in a catering school. Mother did not cease to show me that she hated me, and I was curious to know what I did to her because, for all I could remember, I had done nothing to her. I grew up as an obedient girl. There was nothing my mother asked me to do that I didn't obey. She asked me to give up so many things for Vera, and I obeyed just to see if she would love me, but she didn't. Maybe you should stop trying, Lolita advised, and I knew she was right. Maybe it's time I let everything be. With a sigh, I entered my room, took a bath, and talked to Maxwell for a while. I told him about the recent happenings, and as usual, he encouraged me. That night, I didn't have dinner because I had no appetite. The next day was a lecture-free and work-free day. With that, I stayed in my room all day and wrote a few chapters of my book, talked to Dora over the phone, and went to bed. The following day, the alarm on my phone woke me up. I turned it off with a groan and got out of bed. I said my morning prayers, did my morning exercises, and took a cold shower. What should we wear? I asked Lolita as I stood before my closet. Most of my clothes were worn out, and I knew I needed to go shopping, but I'll do that once I get my first paycheck. After several minutes of searching my closet, I decided to pick a pair of black jeans and a blue peplum dress. I dressed up, tried my hair, and let it loose on my shoulders. I applied light makeup to my face and stared at myself again in the mirror before leaving the room. I got downstairs and met everyone already at the table. "Good morning, Dad," I greeted him as I made my way to my seat. "Good morning, Mom," I greeted her, but as usual, she didn't respond. I stared at Vera, who eyed at me and continued eating. We all dined in silence until Vera broke the silence. "His mother loves and admires me," she said, looking my way. "She also wishes we get married soon." She spoke happily, and Mother joined in. "Of course, which woman wouldn't want someone as beautiful as you as their daughter-in-law," she said, also looking my way. Without being told, I knew they were about to mock me, and I wouldn't sit and listen. "Thanks for the meal," I said as I picked up my plate, washed it in the kitchen sink, and left the house. I decided to take a walk to the mansion to clear my head. After a 20-minute walk, I arrived at the mansion gate, knocked, and the gate opened. I greeted the security I met on my way to the main building, and they all responded, but something was strange. There was a peculiar atmosphere in the mansion, and I couldn't place it. When I got into the mansion, I noticed every servant was busy, and I wanted to ask what was happening but decided to ignore it. Maybe they were expecting a visitor. "Where is Lady Emma?" I asked a maid I met on my way to the stairs. "She went out, but the library is open," she responded and hurriedly walked away. I was surprised as to why Lady Emma would leave the library open, but I shrugged my shoulders and climbed the stairs. I reached the library door, held the doorknob, and pushed the door open. I got in and closed the door behind me. I turned and noticed a figure standing with its back to me. As I approached, I realized it was a man dressed in a well-tailored blue suit. I knew this man was not Alpha Leo. He was so different from him. "Excuse me," I said tentatively, "who are you?" "This library is meant only for the royal family." The man turned around slowly, and I gasped as I recognized him as the hybrid king, the one I met a few days ago. Nora's POV. I was stunned to see him again. I never thought that within the space of 1 week, I'd get to see him for the third time. He had striking black hair styled with precision, framing his chiseled face perfectly. His stunning eyes were the color of dark chocolate, with a glint of power that hinted at his dominant nature. His cheekbones were high and sculpted, adding a touch of refinement to his ruggedly handsome features. He had a well-proportioned, athletic body defined by hard-earned muscle and a subtle hint of stubble on his chiseled jawline. The navy blue suit he wore fit him like a second skin, expertly tailored to enhance his physique and accentuate his broad shoulders. "The world is a big place. Why do I keep seeing you?" he asked with a hint of displeasure in his voice. "Greetings," I greeted him while lowering my head with respect, but I didn't get a response from him. He strode away from the towering shelf of books, his footsteps making a thunderous sound. With a regal air, he made his way toward the round table in the center of the library. As he approached, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The hybrid king was known for his short temper and unpredictable nature. He sat down on the couch with a thud, creaking the wooden frame under his weight. He shot me a displeased glare before asking, "Are you the one Emma talked of?" I swallowed hard, trying to keep my nerves under control as I replied, "Yes, Your Majesty. I am in charge of managing the library's collection." He leaned forward, his piercing eyes fixed on mine. "Good. I have been looking for a particular book, and I expect you to help me find it." He spoke with so much authority in his voice that I found myself submitting to him. "Of course, Your Majesty. What do you need?" I asked, trying to put a welcoming smile on my face, but he frowned. "A Broken Soul. I read it once during my last visit here," he explained while I nodded and asked, "Fiction or non-fiction?" "Non-fiction," he responded. "Romance or?" "Just get me the book," he said, getting irritated by my questions. With a gulp, I quickly scanned the shelves, searching for the book he requested. Finally, I located it and handed it to him, making sure to keep my head bowed respectfully. He did not mutter a word of thanks, but instead, he flipped the pages of the book while I returned to my seat behind him and stared at him. I couldn't believe I got drunk and spent a night with him. I wondered what I must have said and how stupid I must have behaved. As he flipped another page of the book, I noticed a golden ring on his finger, not just on any finger but on a finger where marriage rings are worn. I whispered to myself. He was married, and I spent a night in a room with a married king. What if reporters saw us together and fabricated news online? Then I would surely be dead by now. "Calm down, not like anything happened between you two." My wolf groaned while I scoffed and rolled my eyes. Of course, he wouldn't look at me twice. "Stop staring at me. It's making my wolf uncomfortable." He got me dumbfounded as I marveled at how he was able to know that I was staring at him when his back was at me. With a frustrated sigh, he stood up and made his way over to me. "Here," he said, dropping the book on the desk. "Record it under my name. I'll be needing it for a while." I nodded my head and opened the draft on my laptop. "What's the address?" I asked. "Here. I'll be staying here for a few months," he replied, while I raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Here?" I asked, just to be sure. He let out a frustrated sigh and placed his hands on the desk. "I believe you're not deaf?" he snapped, picking up the book and turning to leave. But I stopped him with my next question. "Is your wife also here?" I blurted out, cursing myself for asking such a personal question. He turned and held my gaze for a moment, as if I had just said something he never expected to hear. He remained silent for a moment, and I could see the anger burning in his eyes. But then he took a deep breath, closed his eyes for a moment, and opened them again. "When was the last time you browsed the internet?" he asked me. "It's been more than 6 months," I responded, wondering why he was asking me this. "You should visit the internet more often," he said before turning and leaving the library. Curiosity got the best of me, and I opened up my browser to search for his profile. As I scrolled through the pages, a headline caught my attention: "Hybrid King's wife and queen die in childbirth." My heart sank as I read the article. The queen had been pregnant with twins, and complications during childbirth had led to her and her children's tragic deaths. The king had been devastated, and the entire kingdom was in mourning. "Oh no," I whispered to myself. As I continued to read, tears began to well up in my eyes. It was a reminder that life could be fragile and fleeting, and that even those in positions of power and privilege are not immune to tragedy. Feeling guilty for prying into someone's personal life, I closed my browser and picked up a book from my desk, hoping to distract myself from the tragic news. But then the door opened and Lady Christabel walked in with a friendly smile. "Hi, Nora. I have a favor to ask of you," she said as she approached me. Nora's POV: "How can I help you, my lady?" I asked as I stood up. She smiled warmly and stood before me. "I need help getting a gift for your sister," she said, and I fell silent. "She will be joining us for dinner, so I thought of getting her a little present," she continued and got a nod from me. "What do you have in mind, my lady?" I asked. "Anything?" "I don't have anything in mind," she responded, and I went silent for a moment before saying, "Vera loves bags and shoes. Maybe you can get her one of those." I ignored the grumbling of my wolf, who didn't like the idea. "That's a nice idea. Could you come with me? I need you to help me pick the type she would love," she requested, and I immediately agreed, even though I didn't want to go. "I'll see you downstairs," she said before turning and leaving. With a heavy sigh, I sat back in my seat as tears welled up in my eyes. All of this was supposed to be mine, not hers. "Why don't you tell his mother? She seems like a good person," my wolf suggested, but I kicked against it. Telling his mother wouldn't change anything. He would officially reject me, and I didn't want to go through such a painful process. With a sigh, I picked up my phone, left the library room, locked it, and took the stairs to the sitting room. I reached the sitting room and met Lord Madison having a low discussion with Alpha Leo. The moment they noticed my presence, they glared my way, and an uncomfortable gulp passed through my throat. With all the courage I could gather, I got to the sitting room and slightly lowered my head in respect to them. Still, I got no response from any of them. Lolita cursed. "What do you want?" Alpha Leo was the first to speak, disgust for me all over his face. "I'm here for the queen," I responded with my gaze away. His attitude killed my wolf, and I knew I had to leave. "You can wait for her outside, now leave," he ordered, but Lord Madison cut in. "What are you doing?" he questioned Alpha Leo, who went silent. They held each other's gaze, and without being told, I knew they were communicating with each other. "Sorry for keeping you waiting," Lady Christabel spoke from the stairs, announcing her presence to us. I watched her majestically walk down the stairs with her usual warm and welcoming smile. She got to the living room, and Alpha Leo placed a kiss on her hand while Lord Madison hugged her. These two men obviously adored her. How lucky she was! "Where are you going, mother?" Alpha Leo asked. "I'm going out to get a present for your mate," she responded while I gulped and held Alpha Leo's gaze. "You've met your mate?" Lord Madison asked, disbelief in his voice. "Yes, he hasn't told you?" Lady Christabel asked, surprised that Alpha Leo hadn't given the news to Lord Madison. "Just because you two are getting older, that doesn't mean you should keep things from each other." You two are brothers, we are cousins, Lord Madison cut in while Lady Christabel rolled her eyes and began leading the way. Where are your guards? Alpha Leo asked, but she didn't respond. You need to go out with the guards. Alpha Leo yelled, but she scoffed, and we both left the sitting room. I walked behind her, and we got into the car. She sat in the passenger seat while I sat in the front seat with the driver. The drive was quiet until she spoke, breaking the silence. Why didn't you tell me your twin sister was my son's mate? She asked. We didn't talk much that day, I responded with an excuse. Oh, she responded while I remained silent. Tell me what your sister is like, she asked, and I remained silent, not knowing what to say. Vera was my sister, and I wanted to give Lady Christabel a truthful answer, but that would mean tarnishing Vera's image. Regardless of what she did to me, I wouldn't do that to her. Vera is a nice girl, I responded hesitantly. Really? That's great news, Lady Christabel spoke happily. She is selfless and hardworking, always looking for a way to help others. I lied and got a disapproving howl from Lolita. Alpha Leo is lucky to have her as a mate, I concluded while tears welled in my eyes. I drew them back and looked outside the window. Vera is lucky to have a sister like you. Not all siblings would say this about their siblings, she praised me while a slight smile appeared on the left corner of my cheek. The journey went silent again until the driver pulled in front of a mall. Lady Christabel and I left the car and walked into the mall. She led the way while I followed behind her. As we continued walking, I noticed all the salespersons lowering their heads in respect to her while she acknowledged them by nodding her head. A lady approached us and bowed before saying, "Welcome, my lady. I'm the manager, and I'll assist you with whatever you need." "Thank you. Can you take us to your most expensive shoes and bags?" Lady Christabel asked. "Yes, my lady. Please follow me," the manager said and led the way. Lady Christabel and I followed the manager through a heavy wooden door and into a luxurious room with shelves of designer shoes and handbags. The room was spacious and brightly lit with spotlights, giving the frames a glittering shine. The walls were painted in a rich shade of burgundy, while the plush carpeting underfoot was a deep, plush red that seemed to absorb sound. The shelves were lined with exquisite footwear, from classic pumps to trendy sneakers. Every shoe was crafted from the finest materials, with delicate detailing and impeccable finishes. Some shelves were even reserved for special collections, like limited edition collaborations or runway designs. The handbags were equally impressive, with various colors, shapes, and styles to suit any taste. There were structured leather totes, sleek clutches, and playful crossbody bags, all carefully arranged to showcase their unique features. The manager beamed as she watched Lady Christabel and me take in the room's beauty. "As you can see, we have an exceptional selection of shoes and handbags," she said. "We take great pride in offering only the finest items for our discerning customers." Lady Christabel's eyes lit up as she approached a shelf of towering stiletto heels. She carefully picked up a pair of shimmering gold pumps, admiring the intricate embellishments on the toes. "These are stunning," she said, smiling at me. "Will they fit her?" she asked. "Let me have a look at it," I said, taking the shoe from her. I checked the shoe size and nodded, "It will fit her." "We wear the same shoe size," I said, handing the shoe back to Lady Christabel. "Why don't you try them on and see?" she requested, and although I wished I could decline, I wanted to avoid seeming rude. "Sure, my lady," I responded and sat on the couch. The manager handed me the other pair of shoes while I put on the first one. Lady Christabel's face lit up with a smile as I put on the shoes. "They suit you perfectly, and you have such nice legs," she complimented me. I smiled in response and took the shoes off. This was supposed to be mine. We'll take these, please bring out more collections, Lady Christabel instructed the manager, who nodded and brought out other shoes and bags. We shopped for hours, and Lady Christabel wrote a check to pay for everything, as well as giving generous tips to all the workers before we left. The sale girls put our purchases into the trunk of the car. I opened the car door for Lady Christabel and gestured for her to enter. She smiled appreciatively and went in. Suddenly, two masked men appeared out of nowhere, brandishing guns and yelling for us to freeze. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to keep my cool. Lady Christabel gasped in terror, but I stepped before her, determined to protect her. The men advanced, and I tried to reason with them. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to sound calm, ready to shift into my wolf form. I knew these men before me were humans. "Your money, your jewelry, and anything else of value," one of the men snarled, jabbing his gun in my direction. "Hey! You humans!" the driver yelled as he got out of the car. When the robbers realized we were not alone, they began firing gunshots and ran away. As I hurried back into the car, I felt a sharp pain in my side and realized I had been shot. The pain was intense, but I gritted my teeth and closed my eyes. "Oh my God, are you okay?" Lady Christabel asked, her voice trembling. "I've been shot," I gasped. "But I'll be okay." I tried to heal myself, but it wasn't working. I had the gift of healing, and this wasn't the first time I was using my abilities, but something was off. "Drive back to the mansion," Lady Christabel ordered the driver in a panic while I closed my eyes and tried to unleash my healing abilities, but they weren't working. "Stay still, we are almost there," Lady Christabel encouraged me while I gasped in pain and tried to communicate with my wolf, but she was silent. With a sigh, I closed my eyes. Tears welled up in my eyes, the pain was unbearable, and it seemed like I was about to take my last breath, but surprisingly, I was still alive. With my eyes closed, I noticed the car stopped, and the driver rushed out of the car. I felt an arm lift me from the seat, and even in pain, I was surprised that I could actually be carried so comfortably by a man. "Is Lord Madison in?" I heard the worried tone of Lady Christabel. "Yes," a maid responded. I couldn't tell or see what was happening, but I knew the arms that carried me were climbing the stairs. "Take her to my room." "I'll get Lord Madison," Lady Christabel instructed, and I was curious, wondering why she was seeking Lord Madison's help. I felt my back placed on a soft mattress, and just then, the door opened. Slowly, I opened my eyes and saw Lord Madison walking inside the room with Lady Christabel. "Please help her," Lady Christabel pleaded while I held Lord Madison's gaze and saw the expressionless look on his face as he approached me. "Don't be scared. Lord Madison is a healer," Lady Christabel assured me while I gasped and closed my eyes. I was also a healer, but I couldn't heal myself. "I need some privacy with her," he said, and I heard footsteps before the door shut. "Open your eyes," he demanded, and I obeyed his words. I watched him sit beside me and place his left hand on my wound. He closed his eyes for a moment and opened them. "What is wrong with your wolf?" he asked, and I couldn't give him a response. With a sigh, he held my gaze for a second before speaking. "You have to lift up your dress," he demanded, while I stared at him dumbfounded. "Don't look at me that way. I have no desire for you," he said, and I blinked, letting the tears that welled in my eyes fall to my cheek. I wasn't crying for the pain I was going through, but his words reminded me of my life and the hurtful words I've heard throughout my life. He held my gaze for a second, and without warning, he tore my dress in a swift motion, exposing my stomach. I gulped shamefully and closed my eyes when I felt his mouth on my wounded side. At first, it was his mouth, but then I felt his fangs something from my stomach, and out of fear, I opened my eyes and saw him still sucking my wounded side until he pulled away, and held my gaze only for me to see his mouth stained with my blood. He opened his mouth and took out a bullet. "I was just trying to take the bullet out," he said and placed his hand on my stomach, and I felt energy in me. Within a minute, the pain stopped, and it felt like I had just been hit by something. He took his hand off my stomach and stood to his feet. "You have a lot of things to learn as a healer." With those words, he walked out of the room. Dumbfounded, I stared at my wounded side and saw no visible mark. Not only had he healed me, but he had wiped away any trace of me being shot. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.